Judge Judy tries to silence Karoline Crockett, but Karoline's reply shocks the courtroom. "This isn't Congress, Miss Crockett. Sit down or be held in contempt." Judge Judy's voice cuts through the air like a blade, gavel cracking once, then again, sharp enough to stop hearts. A moment hangs mid-breath. Cameras click. Staffers shift in their seats. Somewhere in the back, someone whispers, "Did she just threaten her?" Karoline doesn't blink. Her hands rest flat on the witness table, palms open. Composed. She leans slightly forward into the microphone, not to provoke, but to hold the silence like it owes her something. "You don't need a robe to bully a witness," she says, her voice measured, unshaken. "Just a platform and no accountability." Gasps ripple from the gallery like the first cracks in stained glass. Even the court stenographer pauses, hands hovering above the keys. Judy lowers her chin. "Excuse me?" But Karoline doesn't repeat herself. She turns slightly toward the committee, not to grandstand, but to continue. "They asked me to speak on behalf of the women who were displaced. Women who lost custody because courts forgot that poverty isn't neglect. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to translate." Judy lifts a brow, her posture still, coiled. "This is a courtroom, not a campaign rally." "And yet," Karoline replies softly, "the only thing being judged here is whether truth is allowed a voice." The silence tightens again. But Karoline begins reading anyway. Alma Reyes, age 34. Houston, Texas. Her children were removed after a missed court appearance. That appearance was rescheduled 3 times. One of them was canceled because the judge, quote, had a previously scheduled leisure engagement. The decision stood. Judy interrupts. "You're referencing sealed proceedings." "I'm referencing silence," Karoline fires back. "The kind that locks doors behind bureaucracy and expects mothers to carry the blame." Someone in the back murmurs, "Let her finish." Another voice echoes, "She's not wrong." But Judy's glare snaps the room shut. "Miss Crockett," she says slowly, "you may be used to headlines and hashtags, but in my courtroom, I'm not here for headlines," Karoline cuts in. "I'm here because Alma slept in her car for 6 weeks while her toddlers were placed with strangers. All because a docket got delayed." Judy leans forward, jaw set. "You are not an attorney. You have no legal standing." "I have human standing," Karoline answers, low and clear. "And more than that, I was asked." She reaches into her folder, lifts a single sheet of paper. "This is one of 633 letters sent to this court asking for representation. Not from counsel. From community. They didn't want a lawyer. They wanted someone who would say their names." Pause. No movement. No shuffle of papers. Just the weight of the words filling the courtroom like smoke in stained oak. She continues reading. "I didn't miss my hearing on purpose. I had no childcare. I called. No one answered. Then they took my kids." That's what Alma wrote. Judy leans back, but her arms cross, a defensive statue. "This court does not function on feelings." Karoline's voice doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. Then maybe that's the problem. A camera light flicks on, and for a split second, Judy notices. This moment, this tension, it's already out there. What? Streaming. Thousands watching, possibly millions by tonight. She tries again. "You are not permitted to give testimony that compromises judicial process. And you," Karoline says, finally turning to face her directly, "are not permitted to forget what justice is for." Judy lifts the gavel. Karoline lifts the letter. Alma's youngest had a speech delay. She stopped speaking altogether in foster care. That's not on the docket. But it's real. The gavel slams. "You are out of order, Miss Crockett." And Karoline doesn't flinch. Not an inch. She just breathes in. And then asks, quieter than the outburst but heavier than the gavel's echo, "Are you silencing me because I'm out of order, or because the truth isn't?" This time the gasps aren't subtle. They're audible. Audible enough that the bailiff steps forward, unsure if he's being called to remove her, or to listen. The courtroom doesn't move. It watches. One mother in the audience clutches her purse, lips pressed together. Another whispers, "She's saying it. She's actually saying it." A young woman watching on her phone in another state screenshots the moment. By morning, the clip will be stitched with a caption, "Truth doesn't yell. It just refuses to sit down." But for now, there's only silence. And a gavel that didn't silence anyone. Comment your city if you've ever felt forgotten by powerful people. "You said she was just an advocate," Judge Judy snaps, barely letting the chamber door swing shut behind her. "She is," replies the court's legal advisor, trying not to let the tension register in his voice. But the victims wanted her. They trust her more than us. Judy stops mid-step. Her heels echo once on the polished floor of the anteroom. Her eyes narrow. They wanted her? He nods. 633 letters. Some handwritten. Some typed. All delivered within 48 hours of the hearing notice. Judy scoffs. Since when does public sentiment dictate protocol? The advisor doesn't answer. He simply hands her a stack, thick, banded in rubber. The first envelope on top is creased at the corners. On it, in black ink and careful script, to the one who listens. She doesn't open it. I'm not here to read therapy notes, she mutters, brushing past him. But inside, behind that thick wood door, the words are already bleeding through. Karoline Crockett is still speaking, no longer just for Alma Reyes, but for dozens whose names are usually buried under case numbers and court delays. And Judge Judy? She wasn't supposed to be here today. The presiding judge, an older man named Withers, had taken ill that morning. Emergency reassignment placed Judy in the chamber. A procedural loophole. One that the press didn't miss but no one questioned. After all, she was famous. She was powerful. And technically still licensed. But no one told her that Karoline Crockett would be waiting. And no one told her Karoline wasn't alone. Back inside, one of the clerks whispers to another, "Did you see the gallery? There's a woman in every seat." They didn't come for drama. They came because they weren't allowed behind microphones. Because Karoline was. She didn't even have clearance. Judy hisses in a side chamber meeting 10 minutes later. "I want her removed." "With respect," says the junior magistrate assigned to the session. The request came through legal aid channels. The committee voted unanimously. Victim advocacy was the basis of her admission. You were added to the bench after the witness list was finalized. Judy's jaw flexes. She's not a lawyer, she says. She never claimed to be. She's grandstanding. She's reading letters from displaced mothers. Judy's voice drops lower. Cold. Surgical. She's playing martyr. The younger magistrate says nothing. But behind him, a clerk who's been quiet until now speaks up. "She came to my cousin's shelter," she says. 3 times. No cameras. No press. Just questions. And food. Judy doesn't respond. Just turns, grabs her robe and heads back toward the chamber. She doesn't slam the door. But it closes like an argument ending. In the hallway between sessions, Karoline stands near a soda machine that hasn't worked since the Obama administration. Her blouse is wrinkled at the collar. She doesn't adjust it. A woman with frizzy black hair and 2 thin wrists approaches quietly. "You don't know me," she says, eyes darting to a bailiff nearby. "But I'm one of the letters." Karoline smiles, gentle. "I know a lot of names today." The woman shakes her head. "I didn't sign mine." Pause. Karoline waits. "I was scared." "I didn't think it'd matter," the woman continues. "But when you read Alma's name, I was in that shelter too. With my kids. Her boy used to cry if anyone wore red. Reminded him of uniforms." Karoline's voice softens. "Are you safe now?" The woman nods. But her voice cracks. "I got them back. But the court still acts like I lost them because I didn't love them. Not because I didn't have a ride." She grips Karoline's wrist suddenly. Tight. Urgent. "If they cut your mic," she says, "say it louder. We're watching." Karoline nods once. And the woman disappears back into the hallway crowd before the bailiff can notice. Inside the chamber, Judy adjusts her robe at the bench. Her eyes scan the room like a teacher scanning for disruption. She doesn't see rebellion. But she does see recognition. These aren't just spectators. They're survivors. And Karoline? Karoline stands already, her hands calmly resting on the letter stack again. "Do you have something new to add, Miss Crockett?" Judy asks, almost daring her. Karoline doesn't answer immediately. She just breathes in, steady, silent. Then she says, "I wasn't supposed to be here." Judy's smile is thin. "You're right about that. But the women you didn't let speak?" Karoline continues. "They made room for me." She lifts a second letter. "She didn't just ask what happened," Karoline reads aloud. "She asked what we needed." There's no gavel strike this time. Only a soft cough from the gallery. Then quiet again. Karoline goes on. "She showed up when no one else did. She brought peanut butter sandwiches. She didn't ask for our story until after we'd eaten." Judy exhales through her nose. "This court," she begins, "is not obligated to admit emotional testimony." But Karoline's not looking at her anymore. She's reading. "She said we weren't invisible. I believed her. Her voice doesn't shake, but it lands. The letters aren't legal arguments. There's something heavier. And Judy knows it. She taps her pen against the bench. Once. Twice. No sound but that. Then she turns to the clerk beside her. Says under her breath, sharp as frost. This girl's playing martyr. The clerk, younger, blinks once. But martyrs don't win. The day isn't over. The session hasn't ended. But already, something has shifted. The cameras catch it. Not the words, but the space between them. The space where truth used to get lost. But today, it's not going quietly. You've used your time. Judge Judy doesn't say it loudly. She says it the way some people say checkmate, with an edge of certainty so sharp it doesn't need volume. But Karoline Crockett doesn't move, doesn't retreat. She stands at the center of the courtroom like someone who never believed she had time to waste in the first place. Her hands shift over the folder on the desk, carefully, like she's choosing which story matters most in the next breath. Then I'll use my silence, she says. And she doesn't say another word for 5 seconds. Long enough for the cameras to catch it. Long enough for everyone watching, in the courtroom and beyond, to realize she's not being defiant. She's showing restraint. She reaches into the folder. Pulls out a folded paper with a faded red stamp on the top corner. It's bent at the edges and creased like someone had held it too tightly for too long. This is an eviction notice, she says finally, lifting it slightly so it's visible to the bench. Filed April 19, 2021. The name on it is Alma Reyes. Judy exhales through her nose. Taps the gavel once but doesn't bring it down. Her court date, Karoline continues, was rescheduled 3 times. She doesn't raise her voice. She just lets the sentence breathe. Not because of evidence. Not because of procedural error. Because the judge had a spa trip. And then a family obligation. And then, according to the docket notes, personal travel discretion. She places the eviction notice down on the table. That reschedule cost her the roof over her kids' heads. Not because she was irresponsible. But because the system said it would listen, and then didn't show up. Judge Judy's fingers twitch. She leans forward just enough to reassert her presence. This isn't a campaign rally, she snaps. This is the judiciary. Karoline meets her gaze. Unflinching. The kind of look that doesn't rise to a challenge, it quietly refuses to be moved by one. Then act like it, Karoline replies. Show us it remembers who it works for. Gasps move through the gallery. They're not theatrical, they're tired. Recognizing something they've lived too many times to dramatize. I brought stories, Karoline says. You want facts? These are facts. Time-stamped. Signed. Silenced. Until now. She opens the folder again and pulls out a bundle of letters. Rubber-banded, corners wrinkled, ink slightly smudged. These weren't written for PR. They were written for someone who might care. First letter, she says. Written by Desiree Collins. Fresno, California. Judy shifts slightly, arms crossing. But she doesn't interrupt. Karoline reads. I had a hearing scheduled for March 3rd. My lawyer showed. I didn't. Not because I forgot, but because I was in labor. The hospital faxed proof. The judge called it unfortunate timing and awarded custody to my ex. I saw my daughter 4 months later. She didn't remember me. She folds the letter. Places it beside the eviction notice. Then lifts the next one. I don't want pity, she reads, written by Kendra Mitchell of Baton Rouge. I want my time back. The time I lost sleeping in a car, waiting for my hearing that got pushed 3 times for other more urgent cases. What was more urgent than a mom trying to get her kid out of foster care? She sets that one down too. The courtroom is silent. Even Judy doesn't try to speak. Karoline lifts one final page. This one doesn't have a name. Just a case number. But the note says, she pauses, swallowing, it says, I stopped praying when my baby stopped smiling. If justice doesn't come soon, she won't remember what hope sounds like. There's a rustle in the gallery. A woman's hand flies to her mouth. Another woman reaches over and grips her arm. Judy speaks, but it's quieter now. You're not on trial here, Miss Crockett. Don't act like you are. Karoline shakes her head. I'm not. But I've been to the shelter where these women slept. I've held a toddler who called a mattress in a group home his house. I've seen mothers break down not because they lost, but because no one gave them the time to speak. Her voice breaks slightly, not cracked, just curved with weight. This courtroom is obsessed with time. Filing time. Hearing time. Bench time. But we never talk about theirs. The time they waited. The time they begged. The time that was taken. Judge Judy leans forward now, attempting to regain footing. You're emotional. That's understandable. But this court runs on law, not sentiment. Karoline turns toward her. This time her voice is even softer. Even heavier. And what good is law, she says, if it can't afford mercy? A beat of silence. And another. Then someone in the gallery, a mother in her late 40s with tired eyes and a firm jaw, leans toward the woman next to her and whispers. She's not reading our pain. Pause. She's translating it. The woman beside her nods. Not like she's agreeing, but like she's remembering. Back at the bench, Judy lowers her eyes for the first time since she entered the room. Not because she's lost, but because, for once, she's not holding the story. I've presided over more cases than you've had birthdays. Judge Judy doesn't raise her voice this time. She doesn't need to. The insult lands with the crisp sharpness of someone who's thrown it 1,000 times before. The chamber is still. The air hangs heavy. Somewhere in the gallery a pen clicks once, then stops. Karoline doesn't blink. She leans back slightly, her hands folded gently over the now familiar folder of letters, and replies without hesitation. Then maybe you've forgotten, she says, that people don't come to court for entertainment. They come because they've run out of mercy. Judy's eyes narrow. She adjusts her glasses with a flick of her wrist, the motion practiced, theatrical, a tic that's followed her since the days her courtroom was broadcast in millions of living rooms. She lifts her chin slightly as if to reassert the hierarchy. But a camera catches it, the smirk, the dismissive shrug, the glare that follows, and within minutes the clip will be on social media with the caption, Judge Judy sneers while woman pleads for mothers in crisis. Karoline doesn't react to the condescension. Instead, she lets the quiet linger. 1 second. 2. 3. Then, with a tone so soft the microphone almost misses it, she asks, do you remember what it felt like to be ignored? The question doesn't ask for an answer. It asks for memory. Judy shifts in her seat. The murmurs that follow aren't loud. They come in the form of small movements, people turning to look at each other, eyebrows raised, lips parting in breath. The kind of ripple you get when someone says what everyone else was too afraid to. Karoline holds the silence again. Then she continues, but her voice has changed, not louder, not angrier, just more deliberate. Like every word must carry weight because so many before her were thrown out as irrelevant. You built your legacy on the courtroom, she says. On being decisive. On being feared. But there's something about power, Judge. Over time it starts fearing what it used to protect. A bailiff near the far bench leans over to the officer beside him and whispers low, just above a breath. She's not mad at the girl. The officer glances over. She's mad at the reminder. Judy exhales. Her fingers tighten around the base of her gavel, but she doesn't raise it yet. Karoline's not done. You used to rule in favor of battered women, she says. Back before the show. Back before every ruling came with a ratings spike. She stops again. Lets the room feel that shift. We read the transcripts, Karoline says. There was a time you asked a woman what her child's favorite book was before you handed down custody. You cared once. Now Judy speaks, but her voice is flat. Controlled. You know nothing about what I care about. Karoline doesn't flinch. Don't I? She asks quietly. There's a reason your show's catchphrase isn't listen. It's order. And order without compassion is just noise. The room stirs. A woman near the aisle nods slowly, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. Next to her, a man who hadn't moved the entire hearing finally shifts in his seat. They're not watching a fight. They're watching someone disassemble a throne. Judy leans forward now. You're clever, Miss Crockett. And practiced. But this court isn't interested in media martyrdom. Karoline lifts a single page from the folder. Holds it up with 2 fingers. Her voice stays even. This isn't media, she says. This is a notarized statement from a woman whose child was removed during a Zoom hearing where her Wi-Fi failed. She wasn't given a continuance. She was given a termination of rights. She places the paper down. That's not martyrdom. That's paperwork. Another beat of silence. Judy raises the gavel now, halfway. The audience braces. But Karoline looks her straight in the eye and says, with almost a whisper, bang it if you must. But it won't silence what you're hearing. The gavel hangs. Suspended. The silence presses in like a tide. Then it falls. Bang. But no one flinches. No one gasps. No one shifts. Because they're not listening to the gavel anymore. They're listening to Karoline. They've filed a complaint. The words are barely above a whisper, but they land like a dropped verdict. The clerk leans in just behind the judge's bench, face pale, voice tight. Judy doesn't look up from her notepad. She keeps scribbling something, probably nothing, just to keep her hand moving. About what? She mutters. Decorum? The clerk hesitates. No, she says. About you. For the first time that morning, Judy pauses mid-stroke. The pen stops. She lifts her head just slightly and blinks once. Who? She asks. But the sharpness in her voice isn't anger. It's recognition. A coalition of victim families, the clerk replies quietly. And the court watch group out of El Paso. They've been recording emergency custody rulings for a year. Compiling transcripts. Cross-referencing delays. Judy doesn't respond. But something subtle happens. Her jaw doesn't tighten. It slackens just a touch. Like the weight of something she thought she'd buried finally taps her shoulder. Karoline doesn't break the moment. She doesn't rush it. She stands, silent for a second too long, as if letting the tension find its own shape in the room. Then she lifts one final sheet from the folder. This is the last letter I'll read, she says, voice calm, steady. It's short. She unfolds it. The page is crumpled slightly. Folded and unfolded too many times, like someone who couldn't decide whether to send it or burn it. You dismissed me in 7 minutes, she reads. That cost me 7 years with my son. A man in the gallery exhales sharply. Not loud but involuntary. Another woman shifts, gripping her wrist so tightly it turns white. Karoline doesn't add anything. She doesn't explain. She lets the words sit there, raw, unpolished, irreversible. A news camera pans to the bench. Judy's face is expressionless at first. Then a flicker. Not shame. Not panic. Just something unsteady behind the eyes. A single second of faltering. Karoline notices it. But she doesn't weaponize it. She does something else. Something unexpected. She closes the folder. Deliberately. Softly. Then she looks straight at Judge Judy, not with anger. Not even with judgment. But with something deeper. Heavier. Truth. You're not the villain, Karoline says. But if silence is your verdict. She pauses. The room tightens. That's what history will convict. She says nothing more. And this time, there's no gavel. Just the sound of no one objecting. If this made you emotional or angry, comment the word enough below. She's not saying this for herself. The voice comes from the fourth row. Young. Clear. Quiet. A woman no older than 25, says it without moving her head. Just a whisper barely louder than a breath. But it lands. Her friend beside her turns, eyes rimmed red. Nods once. She's saying it because we couldn't. Up front, Karoline Crockett still stands. Still calm. Still alone. Across from her, Judy hasn't moved in nearly a minute. Her fingers hover above the gavel but don't touch it. Not anymore. There's a charge in the air, not of fear, not quite anger. Something else. A courtroom waiting to understand who it belongs to. Then the door to the side opens. The original presiding judge, Judge Withers, walks in. Slow. Measured. He's flanked by 2 aides, one carrying a thick file, the other with a folded newspaper under her arm. He doesn't go to the bench immediately. He steps into the well of the courtroom, pauses near Judy, and speaks loud enough for the chamber to hear. Thank you, Judge Scheindlin. Your temporary bench service is concluded. The court will resume standard procedural order. Judy doesn't argue. Doesn't protest. She just stares at the floor for a moment too long. Then steps back. Not with grace. Not with bitterness. But with the reluctant understanding that the gavel, for once, wouldn't be hers to drop. She leaves the bench and does not return. Karoline turns to face the new old judge. But she doesn't address him immediately. She addresses the room. Her voice is clear. Confident. I'm not here to indict a judge, she says. I'm here to rescue the ones we forgot. Her gaze sweeps the gallery. The tired faces. The bent spines. The hands clutching paper and silence. I was one of them, she continues. Not a mother. Not displaced. But unheard. In 2020, I started attending virtual hearings during COVID. I wasn't supposed to be there. I used Zoom links posted by mistake. But I stayed quiet. I watched. She lifts a slip of paper from her folder. Holds it like a passport. I watched a woman lose custody of her children because her microphone cut out. I watched a man plead for his eviction to be delayed because his dialysis appointment ran long. The judge muted him mid-sentence. She takes a breath. Centered. That's when I realized courtrooms didn't get quieter during COVID. They just stopped being heard. One by one in the rows behind her, people begin to stir. A woman in the back row, gray hair tied back, blazer too big on her frame, rises to her feet. She's holding a sign. White cardboard. Black marker. Case hashtag 4271J. She doesn't speak. She just stands. Then another. Case hashtag 9302W. Then two more. Case hashtag 5523M. Case hashtag 1611B. There is no sound. But there is movement. By the time Karoline looks back, half the gallery is on its feet. Signs in hand. Not with slogans. Not with rage. Just numbers. Stories they weren't allowed to tell, carried now like silent flags. Karoline's voice softens. They said we were too loud, she says. Then too angry. Then too quiet. She turns toward the bench, not demanding. Not performing. But we're still here. She waits. A beat. A breath. Then the final question, soft and thunderous all at once. So tell me, Your Honor, what tone gets heard? The new judge doesn't respond. Not because he doesn't know the answer. But because he knows there isn't one. Not yet. On the bench, the gavel sits untouched. Judy's chair is empty. And in its place, silence. But not the cold kind. The kind that holds something. Willingness. Recognition. A shifting. The camera pans across the room. It captures no tears. No shouting. Just faces, firm, quiet, finally seen. Karoline doesn't speak again. She doesn't need to. The courtroom wasn't quiet after that. But it was finally listening. Did it make a difference? The voice comes from the crush of press waiting on the courthouse steps. Reporters crowd the barricades like sharks circling something they didn't expect to admire. The woman who asked the question, brunette, CBS badge clipped to her collar, doesn't shout it. She just says it with a kind of blunt fatigue. Like someone who's seen too many stories flare up and die before dinner. Karoline doesn't answer immediately. She squints into the sun, holding the folder tighter now that it's closed. She could respond with a slogan. With data. With something clever and shareable. But she doesn't. She just turns toward the camera, tucks a strand of hair behind her ear and says, "Ask the mothers who never thought they'd be seen." Then she walks away. Not triumphant. Not broken. Just whole. By nightfall, the footage has already gone viral. Not the whole hearing, not the technicalities. Just a 10-second clip. Karoline standing still as Judy bangs the gavel. Karoline not blinking. Not raising her voice. Just asking, what tone gets heard? Millions watch it. Some call it grandstanding. Some call it grace. But one thing no one calls it, is forgettable. Within 48 hours, a group of Senate Judiciary members release a formal statement requesting a full ethics review of Judge Judy's conduct during her reassignment hearings. Not because of one witness, but because of years of backlog suddenly exposed through one voice. Across the country, legal advocates begin posting hashtag OneVoice case numbers on Twitter. Survivors write their docket numbers on their hands and share their stories with no faces, just numbers and quotes from hearings they weren't allowed to finish. Karoline doesn't post anything. She just reads. And 2 days later, a plain envelope slides under the door of her apartment. No return address. No name. Just a note, typed in all caps, the ink slightly faded. I spent 30 years in that system. I wore the robe. But I forgot who I was there for. You reminded me. Thank you. Anonymous former judge. Karoline reads it twice. Then sets it down next to the original folder. She doesn't frame it. She doesn't reply. She just folds it carefully and adds it to the growing file of names, letters, and moments that were never supposed to matter, but now do. That evening, a candlelight vigil forms outside the courthouse. No podium. No official organizers. Just folding chairs, a portable speaker, and people carrying handwritten signs with names. Not slogans. Names. Karoline arrives without an entourage. She takes a seat in the second row. A woman beside her hands her a program. It has no agenda. Just a line at the bottom. This wasn't about one voice. It was about ours. When they call her name, she doesn't walk to the mic right away. She looks back at the crowd. The mothers. The daughters. The quiet ones. Then she steps up, holding the same single paper she read from days ago. The one the system once tried to ignore. She doesn't introduce herself. Doesn't offer closing thoughts. She just reads one line. Justice without mercy is just performance. There's no roar. No chant. Just hands clasping. Heads nodding. The kind of applause that isn't loud, but lasts. As the vigil ends, Karoline lingers behind. She walks up to the steps of the courthouse where she first stood, where she first refused to sit down. From her bag, she pulls out the small wooden gavel that Judy left behind. Not a trophy. Not a symbol of victory. But a relic of a system that finally learned what silence sounds like when it's not compliance. She places the gavel on a stack of victim letters, each one sealed, copied, preserved. Then walks away. No one follows her. They just stand there, watching the bench that once tried to bury their stories finally carry the weight of them instead. Will you ever run for office? The voice is small. Hopeful. A girl no older than 12, backpack still slung over one shoulder, looking up with wide eyes and nervous awe. Karoline crouches down level with her. I already do, she says gently. Every time I stand up. The girl smiles. Not because she understands politics, but because she recognizes courage. Inside a newly opened women's legal aid office, a quote is being mounted on the wall above the intake desk. Simple frame. White background. Black letters. They tried to mute her. She made them listen louder. Staffers talk in hushed tones. Survivors sit beside volunteers, sharing stories without needing to lower their voices. No one's rushed. The courtroom never issued an apology. Judge Judy never responded. But something changed. Later that week, Karoline walks past the courthouse for the last time. The cameras are gone. In their place, a mural. Not of her face, but of words, painted across the bricks, unwavering. Order is not justice. Listening is. If you believe the truth still matters in power, subscribe and drop your opinion in the comments.